The father accidentally checked his son's phone, and all the suffering began from there.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Chapel Hill, early winter. Cold wind swept through the old cobbled streets, but Andrew remained standing by the small wooden window frame, holding a cup of hot tea, eyes fixed on the wall clock ticking steadily. Almost 10 p.m. "Where's Julian?" he muttered, eyes never leaving the clock. The small house he shared with his son was near City Square, where he and his late wife used to take Julian to play when the boy was little. Now, with no wife, it was just the two of them relying on each other. Andrew was always proud that he had raised his son with strict discipline, but deep love. "He's never late for dinner like this," he sighed, stepping over to the table where a full plate of food sat untouched. He picked up the phone to call, but the ringtone echoed from Julian's room. Andrew pushed open the ajar door. The phone was lying on the bed, screen glowing with an ongoing chat. Forgot his phone, he frowned and sat down on the bed. His heart started pounding. This wasn't like Julian. He always kept his phone close. A father's instinct stirred inside Andrew. He hesitated, staring at the glowing screen, showing the name, Victor. I shouldn't invade his privacy," he mumbled, hand trembling as he set the phone down. But then a memory flashed: Julian at 5 years old, almost lured away by a stranger promising ice cream. Luckily, Andrew had noticed just in time. Once again, a father's heart overpowered his reasoning. Andrew took a deep breath and unlocked the phone with his fingerprint. He had registered it years ago in case of emergencies. The chat interface popped up immediately. The conversation with Victor sent chills down his spine. "Victor, everything still good? Remember, money before 8 p.m. tomorrow, same place." Julian, "Yeah, I know." Victor, "Good boy. After this, I'll help you get that computer I promised." Andrew read the exchange over and over, his eyes wide. Money? Where? A computer? Who was this man? "Victor, don't tell anyone. As long as you behave, everything will go smooth. Remember, envelope only. No name, don't look around too much." Andrew set the phone on the table, both hands gripping his head, heart racing wildly. No way. Julian? His obedient, quiet son who spent his days buried in books and video games? No. It can't be. He didn't want to think further. But just then, another message appeared from Victor. "Victor, don't be late tomorrow. Last time that other kid was 10 minutes late, almost got tailed." That other kid? Meaning Julian wasn't the only one. Andrew jumped to his feet, pacing the room like a wounded lion. He remembered the day Julian had said he was going to a friend's for a group study. When asked whose house, Julian had dodged the question. Could Carla know something? Carla, Julian's classmate and best friend. She'd been to the house a few times, polite and clearly fond of Andrew. He quickly grabbed his phone and called Carla's mother, Martha, a widowed woman who lived a few blocks away. "Hi Martha, sorry to bother you, did Julian happen to drop by your place today?" "No, hon, haven't seen either of them since yesterday." "Why, is something wrong?" "No. Nothing serious. He must have gone to another friend's." Andrew hung up and slumped into a chair, his mind a storm. Confusion had now turned into real suspicion. He reopened the phone and scrolled further up the old chats between Julian and Victor. One exchange made his skin crawl. "Victor, make sure you bring the full amount. This time it's 400. Don't be short. I don't like broken promises." "Julian, I need more time. My dad asked me about it, and I haven't come up with a good excuse." "Victor, tell him it's for tutoring books. Or sports fees. Make something up. Just get me the money." Andrew dropped the phone. "That bastard," he hissed through clenched teeth, rage rising. This man named Victor wasn't just manipulating Julian, he was dragging his son into something involving money, and possibly crime. He picked up the phone again and opened the photo gallery. In the hidden album, Andrew found dozens of pictures of Julian inside local gaming shops, a few of him handing yellow envelopes to a man whose back was turned. The surroundings matched familiar spots near Market Square. There was even a photo of a wire transfer receipt showing the recipient's name, Victor Gordon, with a code. Andrew gripped the phone tightly, his palm sweaty. His eyes were bloodshot. "No more waiting," he growled. Just then, the front door unlocked. Julian stepped in, coat damp with mist, eyes downcast. "Where have you been?" Andrew asked, voice tight with restraint. I was at Paul's group study," Julian stammered. "Paul who?" "My classmate, from the advanced math group." Andrew clenched his fist but kept his composure. He couldn't afford to blow things up just yet. He needed to observe more. "Next time, text me." "I was worried." Julian nodded and rushed to his room without meeting his eyes. Silence fell over the house, thick and suffocating. Andrew sat back down, gripping the phone tightly. He knew what he had to do next. But how to save Julian without scaring him? Without pushing him into panic? And if his son was already involved in something illegal, was there still time to pull him out? Outside, it had begun to rain. The next morning, after Julian left for school, Andrew waited a while before gently stepping into his son's room. He knew he was crossing a line he would normally never allow, violating his child's privacy. But something deep inside told him that if he didn't act now, it might be too late. Julian's phone was still charging on the desk. Andrew picked it up, unlocked it as before, and reopened the chat with Victor. It wasn't just a few suspicious messages, there were hundreds, stretching back 3 months. The more he scrolled, the tighter his chest became. "Victor, stop saying deliver the goods. Call it passing documents." Julian, "Okay, got it." Victor, "Good. Some new kids need guidance. If you do well, I'll let you lead a small group." Andrew froze. A group? Julian leading others? Was he being dragged into a real network? The deeper he read, the more red flags he found. Victor, Broadway Avenue Gaming Shop, Thursday afternoon. Second floor, back corner, same as last time. Andrew quickly mapped it out in his head. There were 3 gaming shops in that area, and one big internet cafe called CyberHub. He remembered Julian avoiding his questions about going there. Back then, Andrew thought his son was just embarrassed about playing too many games. Now, everything looked different. He opened the photo album and checked the recently deleted folder. Dozens of photos appeared, many showing Julian handing envelopes to someone. The images were blurry, but in a few, the background clearly matched the wall of CyberHub. Andrew had once waited there for a friend and recognized it instantly. One short video, about 12 seconds long, showed Julian standing near a vending machine, nervously slipping a yellow envelope into the hand of a man in a black coat. The man said nothing, just nodded and walked away quickly. "Oh God," Andrew whispered. Every piece of evidence was like a knife twisting in his heart. He asked himself, how did I not see any of this all this time? The doorbell startled him. He rushed to open it. It was Thomas, the neighbor from downstairs, a rugged middle-aged man who smoked a lot and loved soccer. "Hey Andrew. Saw Julian near Lincoln High yesterday. Looked like he was waiting for someone. It was around 8 p.m. "Really?" Andrew tried to stay calm. "Yeah, just passed by, but he seemed kinda nervous." "Something going on?" "No, thanks for letting me know." Thomas looked at him for a moment, as if he wanted to say more, then just nodded and left. Andrew closed the door, heart heavy. If even strangers noticed Julian's strange behavior, Andrew had every reason to act. That afternoon, Andrew took the day off work. He got on his motorbike, helmet on, and rode straight toward Cyber Hub. Along the way, he kept replaying every word from the messages. Second floor, back corner. The gaming shop was quiet around noon. A few kids sat playing, gunshots and music echoing in the air. Andrew walked up to the second floor, pretending to look for a seat. The back corner matched the description: an old sofa, a small table. On it were a few flyers and an unopened water bottle. He quietly sat and waited. About 10 minutes later, a boy in a high school uniform walked up the stairs. Andrew recognized him: Diego, Julian's classmate. He'd visited their home a few times before. Diego sat down on the couch, glancing at his watch repeatedly. Less than 5 minutes later, a tall man in a black hoodie approached. He reached out, took something from Diego, then immediately walked away. Andrew gasped, his heart pounding like it was about to burst out of his chest. This couldn't be a coincidence. The operation was far too similar to what he had seen on Julian's phone. Leaving the cafe, he pulled out his phone and snapped a few photos of the second-floor area. Tonight, he would confront Julian. But first, Andrew decided to stop by the school. He needed to talk to the head supervisor, Mr. Benjamin Mason, an old friend. Roosevelt High School had been Julian's school for the past 3 years. When Andrew met Benjamin in the supervisor's office, he spoke directly. "I'm worried about Julian. Lately he's been sneaking out. I've discovered something serious." "How serious?" Benjamin frowned. "It looks like my son and some other kids are being drawn into some kind of transaction. Possibly money laundering or acting as couriers." "Dear God. Andrew, do you have proof?" "I do, but not enough to raise alarms yet. I need help keeping an eye on him, at least identifying the group he hangs out with." Benjamin thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll keep watch. But this has to be extremely discreet. If they find out, the kids will only hide it deeper." "Thank you, Benjamin. I don't know what else to say." As he left the school, Andrew felt like his head might explode. He stopped by a local grocery store to pick up a few things, trying to appear normal. That evening, when Julian came home, Andrew didn't ask anything. He smiled, invited his son to dinner, and talked about old memories. Julian smiled faintly but kept avoiding eye contact. After dinner, Andrew said, "I'll be at work all day tomorrow. Make sure to lock the door and don't wander around, okay?" "Yeah, I know." But in his mind, Andrew had a plan. The next morning, he would discreetly follow Julian, see where he went, who he met. If lucky, he could catch a specific moment, something that would confirm everything. That night, Andrew didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, thinking about all the terrible possibilities. One wrong move, and Julian could be tied to a criminal case. One small mistake, and his son could be scarred for life. He felt like he was wading through a whirlpool, each step threatened to pull him under. Before sunrise, Andrew was already awake. He put on a dark coat, wrapped a scarf around his lower face, and stood silently in a hidden corner near the entrance of the apartment complex. The early Chapel Hill chill whipped against his cheeks, but his mind burned. Around 7:15, Julian left the house, backpack slung over one shoulder, walking briskly toward downtown. Andrew waited a few seconds, then quietly tailed him. He kept a safe distance, careful not to attract attention. Julian didn't head toward school like usual. Instead, he turned onto St. Paul Street, weaving through narrow alleys that led to Riverfront Park, a place known for its dark corners and quiet mornings. Andrew's heartbeat intensified. Why go there? The more he followed, the more his chest tightened. Julian stopped near a tree, glanced around. Then, from a street corner, a strange man appeared, the same man in the black coat Andrew had seen in the video. Julian approached him. He carefully reached into his backpack and pulled out a yellow envelope. The man snatched it, nodded, and walked off without a word. Andrew stood frozen behind a large tree trunk. His eyes were locked on Julian, who was breathing heavily and looking around, terrified like a cornered animal. In that moment, Andrew felt like his entire world was crumbling. "Oh God, my son," he whispered, fists clenched. This wasn't a message, no longer a suspicion. It was flesh and blood reality, right in front of his eyes. He had to lean against the tree to keep from collapsing. Nausea rose in his chest. He'd heard about crime networks using gaming cafes to lure teens into money drops or illegal transports. But he had never imagined it would happen to his son. Only when Julian left the park and headed towards school did Andrew gather enough strength to step out from hiding. That afternoon, he went to visit his close friend Teresa, a nurse at Chapel Hill University Hospital. Teresa had been a classmate of Andrew's late wife, the only person he trusted enough to confide in. "Andrew, you look awful," Teresa said when she saw him collapse onto the living room sofa. I saw it with my own eyes. My son," he actually handed an envelope to a stranger in the park. "Are you sure?" "I saw it." He looked around like he was hiding, and the man, there's no way I mistook him. Teresa poured him a glass of water and sat beside him. "Julian's only 16. He's still young and easily influenced. Don't blame him just yet. We need to understand more. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like the worst father in the world." Andrew's eyes were red. "You're not, Andrew. You're doing the right thing, watching, not yelling, not hurting him further. But this can't go on." Andrew nodded, but the helplessness weighed him down like an anchor. The pain of watching his son do something wrong even unknowingly felt like betrayal. He returned home before Julian got back from school. As he sat at the dining table, he thought of the good old days, afternoons fishing by the Hoh River, Julian falling off his bike for the first time, the boys' joyful laughter during word games on the porch. "All those moments, are they gone?" he whispered. When Julian opened the door and stepped in, Andrew forced a smile. "How was school today?" "It was fine, Dad." "Did you see Carla?" Julian hesitated. No. She was absent today." Andrew nodded, but inside, the pieces were starting to fall into place. Carla, the once close friend, now seemed to have drifted from Julian's circle. Maybe she discovered something. That night, Andrew couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room, staring into the cold darkness outside the window. He recalled the time the city police held a community meeting about teens being lured into money laundering schemes. At the time, Officer Joseph Dixon had said, "They target kids who feel insecure or financially strained. They don't threaten, they seduce, with sweet talk and small rewards. Once they're in, they're controlled by fear." Back then, Andrew thought, not my kid. He was raised right. But life wasn't that simple. The next morning, Andrew waited for Carla outside the school gates. The girl looked surprised but smiled when she saw him. "Hi, Mr. Andrew. Is everything okay? Carla, would you mind walking with me for a bit?" The two strolled under a row of bare trees. Andrew got straight to the point. "Do you know what Julian's been doing lately? I mean, outside of class." Carla lowered her head, silent. After a while, she said, "I once saw him sitting alone at Cyber Hub, but he wasn't playing games. Just, like he was waiting for someone." "Did you see who?" "I'm not sure. I saw an adult approach him, then the two walked off. I felt awkward, so I didn't ask." Andrew nodded, thanked Carla, and walked her back to school. His mind now more cluttered than ever. Each little puzzle piece was forming a very dark picture. That night, while Julian was studying, Andrew stepped into his room. "Son." Julian looked up. "Yes. I want to talk for a bit. No yelling, no scolding. I just want to understand you better." Julian hesitated, then nodded. Andrew sat in a chair across from him, gazing at his son with both tenderness and resolve. "Is there something you're hiding from me?" The room seemed to freeze. Julian pressed his lips together. 1 second. 2 seconds, then quietly said, "No, nothing, Dad." Andrew nodded and stood. Before leaving the room, he said, "I used to think I knew everything about you. But now I realize, maybe I've been inattentive. No matter what happens, I still love you. But if you keep staying silent, there might come a time when nothing can be fixed." He stepped out and gently closed the door behind him. His heart was pounding, but inside he felt torn. The truth was becoming clearer, but at the same time, the distance between father and son was growing. Andrew knew he would have to face this head-on, sooner or later. But was Julian ready? That night, Andrew tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Images of Julian sneaking around the park, his anxious look when questioned, Carla's scattered remarks, everything tightened around his heart like an iron chain. He glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. Andrew got up, poured himself a glass of water, and leaned against the kitchen wall. The dim light from the fridge cast his shadow on the floor, weary, silent, and a decade older than just a few days ago. The next morning, as Julian was getting ready to leave the house, Andrew called out, "Wait, Julian. Sit with me for a moment." Julian froze by the door, uneasy. "I'll be late for school." "Just a few minutes." He reluctantly sat down, eyes avoiding Andrew's. Andrew took a deep breath, rested his hands on the table, and spoke with a low but firm voice. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Julian remained silent. A slight twitch on his lips, then he shook his head. "Nothing." Andrew pulled his phone from his pocket and placed it on the table. The screen showed an image: Julian in the park, handing an envelope to a man. Julian went pale. You followed me?" "Yes. Because I saw you lying to me. Leaving the house late at night. Leaving your phone behind. And because I've been the most clueless father in the world, not realizing my own son was being taken advantage of." "You don't understand." Julian suddenly jumped to his feet. "Then help me understand." Andrew raised his voice too, then calmed himself, his voice trembling. "Please, son. I'm begging you." The room fell silent. Julian collapsed back into the chair, covering his face. After a long pause, he spoke, voice cracking. "His name is Victor. He approached me at the gaming cafe. At first, he was just friendly, offered me food, talked to me. He said I was smart, quick, and could help him with a few things." "What kind of things?" "Delivering documents. Envelopes. Money. He said it wasn't illegal. Just helping out people who couldn't show their face." "And you believed him?" Julian lowered his head. "I had doubts at first. But, he promised me money. I wanted to buy a computer, to learn more about coding. I knew you were struggling. I didn't want to ask for money again." Andrew clenched his fists, tears rolling down his cheeks. "So you chose to lie to me? To work for a stranger? To risk your entire future for a computer?" "It's not just the computer." Julian broke down crying. "I wanted to be independent. I see my friends with everything. I hate always having to ask for money. I feel small, weak." Andrew felt like someone was crushing his chest. He had thought he raised Julian to be honest and proud. But that same pride, when left unsupported, had turned into shame, and shame opened the door for people like Victor. "Do you realize you're being used? Do you understand the police could arrest you for moving illegal money?" Julian nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I know, but once I was in too deep, I was scared to stop." He said, if I backed out, he'd go to the police and lie, say I was the one in charge. Andrew stood frozen. For the first time, he saw the sheer terror in his son's eyes, not fear of being scolded, but fear of being abandoned by the entire world. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Julian's shoulder. "You made a mistake. But you're still my son. And I won't abandon you." Julian sobbed, collapsing into Andrew's arms like the little boy who used to run home crying after falling off his bike. Andrew held him tight, his heart breaking but also softening. The truth was finally out. After a long conversation that lasted over an hour, Andrew called Teresa and asked her to help him contact a community lawyer, James Reed, someone who had helped many families with minors involved in criminal activity. "Andrew, I remember you. Teresa told me everything. I can meet you and Julian this afternoon," James said over the phone, his voice calm but sharp. "Please. The sooner, the better." That afternoon, in Teresa's living room, James sat across from the father and son. He was a man in his 40s, lean, with piercing eyes. "Julian, you're not the first kid to be manipulated. People like Victor use the best parts of you, your desire for independence, your pride, and turn them into tools for crime." Julian looked down. "The good news is, if you cooperate, and if you haven't committed a serious crime yet, there's still a chance to fix this. But you must be honest and tell everything to the police." I'm ready." James turned to Andrew. "We should go to the station tomorrow. I'll go with you both. But I'll need copies of the messages, photos, and any evidence you have." Andrew nodded. He had already prepared everything. On the drive home, Julian sat silently in the back seat. Andrew glanced at him in the rearview mirror and spoke. "I'm not angry at you for making a mistake. I'm just heartbroken that you felt too scared to talk to me when you were in trouble." Julian looked up, his eyes red. "I was afraid of losing you." Andrew chuckled through tears. "You silly boy. What father would leave his son just because he feels weak? It's because you're weak that you need me most." That night, for the first time in days, Andrew finally slept. The next morning, the three of them, Andrew, Julian, and lawyer James, entered the Central Police Station in Chapel Hill. In the interview room, Julian sat across from Inspector Lucy Owens, a woman with a stern exterior but kind, understanding eyes. Lucy listened carefully to everything Julian said, then responded. "Thank you for your courage. With what you've given us, we'll begin an investigation immediately. And the good news is, you haven't committed a criminal offense yet, but full cooperation will be essential moving forward." Andrew watched from behind a glass panel, looking at his son from a distance. He couldn't hear the conversation, but for the first time in many days, Julian's eyes no longer looked frightened. Something had been released inside him. And Andrew, though his heart still ached, saw a faint light breaking through the long, dark tunnel he had just walked. He walked slowly down the hallway of the police station, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the cold air, like a voice from deep within. Even though he had prepared himself, even though he expected it, he still couldn't hold back the wave of dizziness when Lucy Owens confirmed. "Victor Gordon is already on our financial crime watch list. But he's cunning. We'll need time to gather enough evidence." That sentence sliced quietly but deeply through Andrew's heart. Julian, his beloved son, had not just been manipulated by a criminal, but was now standing on the edge of a cliff, where one wrong step could lead to a fall from which there was no return. On the way back, Julian sat in the back seat, hands trembling, eyes blank. Andrew glanced at him in the mirror but said nothing. He didn't know whether to be angry, sympathetic, or simply cry. His mind was a mess. That night, the house was soaked in heavy silence. Julian locked himself in his room. Andrew sat alone under the soft yellow light, holding an old photo of the two of them when Julian was 4. In the picture, Andrew carried his son on his back, both of them smiling brightly beneath the trees in Riverside Park. Julian's innocent grin pierced straight through his chest. Teresa called. "Did you get home?" "Yes. Thank you for everything. Are you okay?" "No. I've never felt this useless." Teresa sighed. "Andrew, No one ever taught us how to be parents in situations like this. But as long as you're standing by your child, fighting for him, you are not failing. But even her comforting words couldn't mend the crack that had split right to the root of Andrew's pride. He thought of all the years raising his son alone. The nights cradling Julian to the doctor for high fevers. The mornings skipping breakfast so he could afford a new pair of sneakers. The afternoons spent on the porch, listening to Julian recite poems he memorized. And now all of it nearly erased by a man named Victor, just because he had missed the shame hiding in his son's eyes. The next morning, Andrew didn't go to work. He took an indefinite leave of absence. When his manager, Linda Green, called to ask why, Andrew simply said, "My son's in serious trouble. I need to be with him." Linda hesitated, then softened her voice. "I understand. You're one of our best, Andrew. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask." Andrew thanked her and hung up. He walked to Julian's room and knocked. "You okay?" "Yes. Can I come in?" After a moment, the door opened. Julian was sitting on his bed, his face still marked by the imprint of the pillow. Andrew stepped in and gently sat down beside him. "You don't have to go to school for the next few days," he said softly. "But I don't want you to lock yourself away like this either." Julian kept his head down. I'm ashamed. Everyone makes mistakes in life. But you have the right to make it right. Do you think people will ever trust me again?" Andrew didn't respond immediately. He looked into his son's eyes, then said, "I'll be the first to trust you. But only if you're ready to start over." Julian slowly nodded. The following days felt like wandering through darkness. Andrew took Julian to the Youth Support Center to meet with a counselor, Stephen Porter, a man in his 50s with a soft voice and perceptive eyes. The first session, Julian said nothing. But by the third, he began to open up, about the shame, the fear, the sleepless nights worrying about being caught, and the times Victor called to threaten him. Later, Stephen spoke privately with Andrew. "Your son hasn't lost his character. He's lost his direction. Trust me, he can recover, but it will take time, and more importantly, the persistence of a father." Andrew nodded, though he felt increasingly worn down. Night after night, he would wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding. He was being drained. One night, after Julian had fallen asleep, Andrew sat in his study and turned on his old computer. He was going to send a formal resignation email, but then a file caught his eye, Julian's future plan. It was a document he'd written when Julian was in 6th grade, listing simple goals like: buy laptop for high school, join tech club, help him apply for college scholarships. He broke down in tears. Those goals had seemed so simple, but in the struggle to make ends meet, they had been postponed and forgotten. And Julian, never demanding, had chosen to be independent through a dark path. The next morning, Andrew asked Julian to go fishing, something they used to do together years ago. At first, Julian hesitated, but eventually agreed. They went to the bank of the Hoh River. It was still chilly. Andrew brought 2 rods and a small bait box. "When was the last time we did this?" Andrew asked. "When I was in 7th grade. You were busy with a project." Andrew paused. "I'm sorry." Julian turned and gave him a faint smile. "It's okay. You were doing your best." They sat in silence for a long time, with only the sound of flowing water and birdsong in the breeze. Andrew felt a weight lift slightly from his chest. As the sun rose higher, Julian spoke up. "I want to go see my old teacher, Miss Brooke. I promised her I'd study hard to become a software engineer." Andrew looked at him, emotions welling up. His son, though he had stumbled, still held on to that promise. "I'll come with you." On the drive back, Andrew suddenly said, "I used to think I had lost you forever. I used to think I didn't deserve to be your son anymore." Andrew stopped the car and looked at him. We were both wrong. But no mistake is bigger than love. Julian's eyes brimmed with tears. I'll try. Even if it's slow, I'll start again. Andrew gripped his son's hand. In that moment, in the heart of Chapel Hill, under the December sun, no more words were needed. Andrew sat still in the living room, the yellow light from the ceiling casting tired shadows on his face. Outside, the wind howled, mirroring the turmoil inside this weary father. It had been 3 days since Julian had entered the interrogation room and revealed everything he knew about Victor and the shadowy money transfer network operating in Chapel Hill. The police confirmed that Julian's testimony was key to launching a broader investigation. But at the same time, they made it clear. He's walking a very fine line. If there's evidence that he knowingly continued illegal activity, the consequences could be different. That statement hit Andrew like a punch to the gut. Though Detective Lucy Owens, who was leading the case, assured them that Julian's age and the fact that he was manipulated would be taken into consideration, no one could guarantee he'd walk away free of legal trouble. That evening, Julian came out of his room holding a photo. He handed it to Andrew. It was a picture of the two of them at St. John's Church 3 years ago, taken during Christmas, Massachusetts. In it, Julian was smiling brightly, his arm around his father's shoulder. I thought, if I ever had to go away, I'd want to bring this with me. Andrew froze. The words pierced his heart like a needle. Go away. Who said you're going anywhere? I just thought, if they decide I have to take responsibility. No. Don't you ever say that again. Andrew snapped, then quickly softened, sitting down and looking at his son with teary eyes. I won't let that happen. I swear. Julian didn't respond. He simply folded the photo, set it on the table, and quietly returned to his room. That whole night, Andrew didn't sleep. He wandered through the house like a ghost. In his mind, a single thought turned like clockwork. Hide it or face it. If they had refused to continue cooperating with the police, didn't let Julian testify, they might avoid public scrutiny, avoid a permanent legal record. But Victor would remain at large. And Julian? He could be pulled back in. Next time, it wouldn't just be envelopes. It might be drugs, threats, things Andrew couldn't even imagine. But if they faced it, brought everything into the light, continued working with the authorities, let Julian testify, they would have to confront the media, society, and even the possibility of criminal charges. It would be a long, thorny road, with no certainty of the destination. Around 3 a.m., Andrew opened a drawer and pulled out an old wooden box. Inside were handwritten letters from his late wife, Rose, who had passed away from cancer when Julian was 8. He picked up one letter, his hands trembling as he read. If one day I'm no longer here, please always remind our son that courage doesn't mean being unafraid, it means being afraid but moving forward anyway. Our son is the most beautiful gift. Don't let anything steal his spirit. Andrew bowed his head over the box, tears falling freely. Rose. I've been too weak. I tried to protect him so much that I didn't realize he was falling. The next morning, he woke Julian. Get up, son. I want us to go see James. Julian looked at him, surprised. For what? I've made up my mind. We're going to keep working with the police. No more hiding. But, what if I really do get charged? What if they? Then I'll be there. Every second. Every minute. I'd rather see you stand in the light and grow stronger than live your whole life in fear and shadows. Julian was silent for a long while, then said. Then. I won't hide anymore. When they arrived at James's office, the middle-aged lawyer nodded after hearing Andrew's decision. I agree. Voluntary cooperation will be noted. The three of them went to the police station. There, Julian signed a formal agreement to act as a witness. Lucy Owens assured them that she would request protective measures to keep his identity confidential and minimize public exposure. In a private room, Andrew was shown new data the police had gathered from Victor's network. One audio recording left him speechless. Victor's voice, "That kid Julian still doesn't suspect a thing. He actually believes I need help. Kids, give them a few bucks and they're obedient like puppies." A wave of icy rage surged in Andrew's chest. "You bastard," he whispered. As they left the station, Julian quietly asked, "Do you regret it? Turning me in?" Andrew paused. "Yes. I regret not doing it sooner. If I had been braver from the start, maybe you wouldn't have gotten pulled in." "No, don't think that," Julian said, for the first time reaching out and holding his father's hand. "I made the choice. But you saved me." That evening, Andrew received a phone call from Mr. Benjamin Mason, principal of Roosevelt High School. "I've just been informed that Julian has been officially suspended for 1 week pending investigation. It's not a verdict, but the school must follow protocol." "I understand," Andrew replied, trying to remain composed. "But I want you to know I believe in your son. And I'll do everything I can to shield him from unfair judgment." Andrew put down the phone and turned to Julian, who was sitting at his desk. The boy wasn't playing games, drawing, or reading. He just sat there, staring at the blank computer screen. Andrew walked over and gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You might lose some friends, and people might watch you closely. But never lose yourself." Julian nodded. "I'll try. I don't want to make you sad anymore." Andrew smiled softly. "No. I don't need you to be good for me. I need you to live honestly for yourself." That night, for the first time in a long while, Andrew wrote a journal entry he had neglected for years. "I don't know where we're headed, but today, we chose truth over fear. And that, however small, is a victory." A week after Julian signed the witness statement, their small home felt quieter than ever. Not the silence of distance, but the heavy stillness of those trying to move past a crisis with no clear end. News of Julian's temporary suspension spread quickly through the school. Rumors flourished, from the hallways to group chats. Some claimed Julian was involved with drugs. Others said he was caught by police dealing with gangs. Although the school didn't release details, the ambiguity only fueled speculation. One afternoon, Carla, a friend who had once been very close to Julian, knocked on the door. Andrew opened it, slightly surprised. "Hello, Carla. Are you here to see Julian?" "Yes. I know he's not back at school yet, so I brought him his math and physics notebooks." Andrew smiled, a hint of warmth in his eyes amidst the gloom. "Come in. He's in his room." Julian opened the door, eyes widening at the sight of Carla. "You, really came?" "Yeah. I heard all the rumors at school. Some say you got arrested. But I won't believe anything until I hear it from you." Julian swallowed hard. "I was tricked. Someone lured me into doing bad things, but I never dealt drugs or stole, like they're saying. I'm trying to make things right." Carla nodded and handed over the notebooks. "These are last week's lessons. I took notes for you. And, when you come back to class, sit next to me like before, okay?" Julian bit his lip, eyes glistening. "Thank you." As Carla left, Andrew stood silently at the doorway, watching. He felt that, after all the dark days, the kindness of one girl had rekindled a spark in Julian he feared was extinguished. That evening, Andrew received a call from Detective Lucy Owens. "We successfully raided one of Victor's facilities on Elm Street. We found substantial evidence related to illegal money transfers." "What about him?" Andrew asked, holding his breath. "He fled. It seems there was a leak. But at least we've frozen several accounts and arrested 2 intermediaries." "Does Julian still face prosecution?" Lucy hesitated. "Most likely not. Will recommend no charges due to his voluntary confession and active cooperation. However, the Justice Department is considering mandating his participation in a 6-month juvenile rehabilitation program. Andrew collapsed onto the couch. 6 months. Lucy added. This program isn't a detention center. It's a course in life skills, psychology, and ethics. A second chance, so to speak. After hanging up, Andrew went to Julian's room and relayed everything. The boy listened quietly, then said, "I'll go." "Are you sure? I don't want anyone else to bear the consequences for me. If this is how I truly make amends, I'm ready." Andrew embraced his son tightly. "I'm very proud of you." The next morning, Andrew walked around Lincoln High School square. He looked at the stone-paved paths, the park benches where he and Julian once shared ice cream. Suddenly, a voice called out behind him. "Andrew?" He turned. It was Joseph Dixon, the police chief who had once conducted an awareness session at Julian's school. "I heard from Lucy about the case. Your boy, he's brave." "No. He's terrified. But it's because he's scared that he chose to face it." Joseph nodded. "That's true courage. And you, Andrew? Many parents choose silence out of fear of public opinion. You did the right thing." Andrew offered a faint smile. "I wish I'd known sooner. No one is a perfect father. But standing up to protect your child when they stumble, that's a form of heroism." That night, before bed, Julian knocked on his father's door. "Do you remember when I was in 4th grade and lied about breaking the neighbor's window?" "Of course. You blamed the kids playing ball outside. I remember you didn't scold me. You just sat beside me and said, 'You can make mistakes, but don't let those mistakes distance you from me.'" Andrew looked up, moved. "I still believe that." "So do I. And this time, I won't distance myself from you again." They hugged for a long time. A week later, Julian officially joined the rehabilitation program at the New Hope Youth Center. Andrew took him there, heart heavy. Before entering the gate, Julian turned back. "I'm scared." "I'm scared too. But you're still coming with me." Andrew held his son's hand tightly. "Because I'm your father." As the gate closed behind Julian, Andrew stood still for a long time. The high brick wall covered in ivy concealed everything inside. He saw nothing, heard nothing. Only his heart silently screamed. Had he lost his son? No. His son was still alive. Still knew fear, acknowledged mistakes, and chose to turn back. And that, however fragile, was the final glimmer he needed to keep going. Andrew returned home and entered Julian's room. Everything remained untouched: the bookshelf, the desk, the paper airplane models they had folded together. He took out the notebook where his son had once written his career dreams. A childish line appeared. "One day, I want to be the best computer repairman in the world so everyone will come to me." Andrew chuckled softly, tears falling onto the page. "No, Julian. You won't just fix computers. You're learning to fix yourself. And I'll wait for you to complete that journey." He closed the notebook and looked out the window at the December sky. Snow began to fall gently. Winter had arrived, cold and silent. But inside that small house, a father's heart warmed, fueled by the flickering flame of unconditional love. The New Hope Youth Center was situated on the northern edge of Chapel Hill, amidst dry fields interspersed with sparse pine forests. Julian stood before the black iron gate with a shiny stainless steel sign gleaming under the sun, his heart filled with anxiety. Even though his father had brought him here, he was still afraid. Will they treat me like a criminal? Julian wondered. A man in a gray turtleneck sweater came out to greet them. It was Robert Allen, the program's lead counselor. "Hello, both of you. I'm Robert. You must be Julian, right?" Yes, sir. Good. Here, we don't call our participants rehabilitation students. We call them young people learning to stand up again. Andrew gently squeezed his son's shoulder and nodded to Robert. I'm entrusting him to you. Robert smiled. You can visit every weekend. We encourage families to be involved in the recovery process. Julian looked back at his father as the gate closed behind him. Andrew stood there, eyes fixed, until his son's figure disappeared behind the beige building. The schedule at the New Hope Youth Center was tightly structured. Mornings were for life skills and psychology classes, afternoons for group activities and light labor, and evenings for writing self-assessment journals. No one was forced, but no one could avoid participation. In the first class, Julian sat next to a long-haired boy named Lucas, who had been sent to the center for shoplifting. I heard you were involved in a money laundering ring. Lucas whispered. Yeah. But I was a victim. I was tricked. I was tricked too. The first time was to buy soccer shoes. After that, I couldn't stop. They looked at each other, saying no more, but their eyes shared an unspoken understanding. In the afternoon, Robert led the group outside to work in the garden. Here, everyone has to grow at least one garden bed. We call it the redemption bed, Robert said with a smile, pointing at a small patch of land. We believe that if you care for it with effort, something inside you gets cleansed too. Julian chose a plot on the edge and began planting the first tomato seeds. For the first time in months, he felt he was doing something simple without fear. That weekend, Andrew came to visit. Robert welcomed him with a warm handshake. Julian is making fast progress. The boy is responsible, cooperative, and open. That means a lot. Andrew sat on a stone bench in the garden where Julian was placing bamboo stakes for the climbing plants. Your vegetable bed looks nice, he said. Do you know what I named it? What? Trust. Andrew nodded, moved. I'm growing a bed just like that in my heart. And every day, I water it with hope. Julian paused. Are you angry with me, Dad? I am. But not because you made mistakes. I'm angry because I didn't see you were about to fall. I'm sorry. I don't need an apology. I need you to stand back up. 3 weeks passed. Thanks to Julian's testimony, the police launched a deeper investigation. They traced a network of gaming shops and internet cafes used as fronts for Victor and his gang to launder money. Detective Lucy Owens called Andrew. Thanks to Julian's phone data and his testimony, we just issued arrest warrants for 3 individuals. Victor hasn't been caught yet, but we're closing in. Will Julian have to testify in court? Possibly. But only as a witness. We'll request special protection status for him. At the New Hope Youth Center, Julian began rewriting his life with honest words. Each evening, he sat at a computer and wrote emails to the people he had hurt: Carla, his homeroom teacher, and even himself. With Robert's guidance, he learned how to apologize without blaming, how to accept consequences without drowning in guilt. One day, Robert sat beside him after class. You know, Julian, the root of guilt isn't the wrong action. It's letting that mistake define who you are. What if people always see me as a criminal? Then you have to see yourself as someone trying to live better. Every day. In the second month, local newspapers featured news of raids on illegal operations in Chapel Hill. The front pages showed handcuffed suspects, their faces full of shock. Julian's heart pounded when he saw the news. One of the arrested was Jacob Miller, owner of the Cyber Hub gaming shop. Jacob had often handed Julian envelopes when Victor wasn't around. Robert entered the reading room. You okay? They got him. But what about Victor? Police are tracking him. Looks like he's hiding somewhere in the suburbs of New York City. Julian took a deep breath. If needed, I'll testify. I believe you, Robert said. Andrew received a letter from the police, Julian had been approved for early release from the program after 3 months, based on active cooperation, positive rehabilitation, and low risk of relapse. On the day he picked up his son, Andrew prepared as if it were Julian's first day of kindergarten. He brought a warm coat, an old storybook they used to read together, and a special box of rice balls, Julian's favorite. Robert shook Andrew's hand. "Your son is one of the bravest boys I've ever met." Julian stepped out of the building in a dark coat and backpack. But this time, his eyes weren't cast down, they looked straight ahead. "You're taking me home, right?" "Always." In the car, Julian said. "I want to go back to school. But first, I want to visit the police station." "For what?" "I want to talk to Officer Lucy. I want to know if I can still help catch Victor." Andrew looked at his son through the rearview mirror. In those eyes, he finally saw what he had waited months to see: determination. At the Central Police Station, Lucy Owens greeted Julian with a rare smile. "What brings you back here?" "I wanted to ask if you still need information from me." "I'm ready to help more." Lucy was surprised, then nodded. "We're analyzing some old data you sent. There are phone numbers that called you, but we haven't identified the owners yet." Julian asked. "Can I meet with other kids who were tricked like I was? I think, maybe if I talk to them, they'll open up more easily." Lucy looked at Andrew, then at Julian. "This kid might just be better off becoming a cop someday." 1 month after leaving New Hope Youth Center, Julian officially returned to Roosevelt High School. Although a little hesitant at first, he quickly realized something: not everyone had turned their back on him. Carla was the first to run up and greet him. "You look different today." "Different good or different bad?" Julian laughed. "Different, like, more mature." Mr. Benjamin Mason also met him after class. "Welcome back. I saved your seat by the window, your favorite spot last year." "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." Meanwhile, at the Chapel Hill police station, Lucy Owens received a confidential report. Victor had been spotted at a roadside motel outside New York City, using a fake identity and preparing to flee to Canada. That very night, a special task force was dispatched. Lucy joined them herself. Early the next morning, as Julian and Andrew sat down for breakfast, Andrew's phone rang. It was Lucy. "We caught Victor early this morning," she said. "Thank God." Andrew whispered. "I wanted the boy to hear it from me. Anne." "Julian, if you're listening, I just want to say, thank you. Without you, he might still be free." Tears welled in Julian's eyes. He spoke into the phone, voice trembling. "Thank you for believing in me." Lucy replied. "You saved yourself. And others too." A few weeks later, the Chapel Hill court held a preliminary hearing for the money laundering case involving Victor Gordon and his associates. Andrew and Julian were both invited to attend as witnesses and investigative supporters. When Julian entered the courtroom in a small suit his father had prepared, the room fell silent. Reporters turned their heads to look at the boy who had once been a victim and was now the one who exposed an entire criminal network. Victor was brought in, handcuffed, looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes. He glanced at Julian briefly, but this time, there was no contempt, only fear. On the stand, Julian testified clearly and confidently about how Victor had approached him, lured him with promises, then used threats. Victor's defense attorney tried to argue that his client was just a misunderstood businessman, but overwhelming evidence from photos, messages, and audio recordings rendered the excuses meaningless. When it was Andrew's turn to testify, he said, "I used to think that being a father meant shielding your child from storms. But the truth is, being a father means teaching your child how to walk through the rain without losing himself. I don't hate Victor for targeting my son. I hate that he saw a boy full of self-doubt and still chose to exploit him." The trial concluded with a 12-year prison sentence for Victor Gordon and sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years for his accomplices. Local newspapers called the case the most shocking juvenile financial crime event in Chapel Hill in a decade. After the trial, Lucy Owens approached Andrew and shook his hand. "You didn't just save your son. You saved many other families too." "I only did what a father is supposed to do." Lucy looked at Julian laughing in the distance with Carla and a few new friends, then added, "He deserves a fresh start." Life gradually returned to normal for Andrew and his son. Julian focused seriously on his studies, especially in computer science. He joined the school tech club, learned programming from scratch, and set a new goal for himself, earning a technical university scholarship in New York City. One afternoon, Andrew came home early and found Julian tinkering with his old laptop. "Is it broken again?" Andrew asked. "No. I'm reinstalling the operating system. It still runs." "We don't need a new one yet, Dad." Andrew sat beside him and chuckled. "You used to risk everything for that machine. And now you're patiently fixing it. Because I know, not everything old should be thrown away. Just like our father-son relationship. It seemed cracked at one point, but we managed to mend it." Andrew looked at his son, overwhelmed with pride. That summer, the two of them decided to take the trip they had long planned but never made, a vacation to the New England coast. In their old car, they played classical music and talked about books, strange foods, and dreams. There was no distance, no suspicion. Just two people who had overcome the darkest of challenges and come to understand each other better. At Hampton Beach, Julian sat under the porch of their motel, watching the blazing sunset stretch across the water. Andrew sat beside him, holding a thick book. "Do you think all of that happened so I could learn a lesson?" Julian asked. "I think I learned one too." "About what?" "About never assuming I completely understand my son. People always change. And what I need to do is listen, not just teach." Julian smiled. "Then I also need to learn how to speak up, instead of keeping things inside." They sat in silence for a while. Only the sound of waves and distant seagulls remained. Then Julian pulled out his phone and opened a note. "I wrote something. I want to read it to you." Andrew nodded. Julian read aloud, his voice clear. "I used to think being strong meant needing no one. But now I know, being strong is asking someone to hold your hand when you're about to fall. I used to think mistakes were the end. But now I understand, mistakes are the beginning of understanding. I used to think you would be disappointed in me forever. But now I see clearly, you never let go." Andrew turned away, hiding the tear that had just rolled down. "Not only did I never let go. From now on, I'm holding on even tighter." At the end of the term, Julian received a recovery scholarship for at-risk students with excellent rehabilitation progress from the Hudson Foundation. When the letter arrived, he said nothing. He simply placed it on the kitchen table and smiled from ear to ear. Andrew read the letter, then hugged his son. "Now you really deserve a new laptop." "No need, Dad. The old one still works. And, more importantly, I want to keep it as a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That some things are worth holding on to not because of their value, but because of the journey it took to fix them." On a bright sunny day, Andrew and Julian sat under their porch, beneath a green potted plant Carla had given them. They drank tea and talked about plans, places they wanted to go, and unfinished dreams. "Are you afraid of the future?" Julian asked. "Of course. But I'm not walking it alone anymore." Julian smiled. "Me neither." They looked at each other, nothing more needed to be said. What had once been painful was now healed not by magic, but by courage, persistence, and true love. The sky over Chapel Hill was stunningly blue. Tomorrow it might rain again, but today for them was the most beautiful day. The story is a profound reminder that a father's love and courage can save a lost soul. No one is immune to mistakes, but what matters is how we rise after the fall. Parents can't shield their children from every hurt, but they can walk beside them, listen, and help them learn how to face the world. When truth is chosen over fear, when responsibility is placed above pride, that is the beginning of maturity.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.